This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by Alex Barth.
That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
You know me, I wanted on when to a tackle. I just think premium position put the better player there, but I'm kind of coming around to it. Let's wait to put the right tackle out there until we know what they have at quarterback. No, I thought that might get you. That was a joke. Good job.
I usually laugh at your jokes. I feel like I usually.
It wasn't even a joke. I was trying to get you going, get you started.
Oh no!
And
no.
You didn't take the bait.
We're not taking the bait on the Drake May. When should Drake May start conversation for a while?
It's specifically the tackle conversation. I think people have had plenty of us talking about that message received.
We have no more new information until July. Our take is out there on that. We don't need to keep going crazy about that topic, but it's Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22 for the next couple hours here in our temporary studio, which I think, applause to Marine and Dave Sarnovitz and everybody put this together. This is pretty nice, don't you think? This is pretty good.
Yeah.
I liked it. I saw it on the video, and it looks pretty sweet. I like the projected Elvis here that we have on the table. It's a nice look for temporarily for the studio, and then we're gonna move back into the old studio at some point, and it's gonna be what you see out of a lot of these new. I don't want to reveal too much, but it's gonna be pretty fancy.
It's gonna be something.
It's gonna be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to the new studio as well when we get back in there in a couple of weeks. But we are another thing that people have a pet peeve about, Alex. It seems like this time of year is when the football podcast starts talking about other sports. So as you can imagine, on Tuesday on Patriots Unfiltered, we were Celtics Unfiltered for about an hour and 45.
Somebody in the YouTube comments already said this is going to be Catch 10 instead of Catch 22.
Yeah. So I understand, but I will say in this way, there's not much to talk about right now with the football team, guys, right? Like, the football team's not even here.
It's just the time of year.
They're not practicing. Obviously, the topic of conversation around the city is the Celtics and the Celtics winning the championship. But I think to make it a little bit about football, because we are a football podcast. This is not Catch 10. This is Catch 22. You always look at championships, and one of the coolest things about Boston is that all the teams are intertwined in some sort of way. They're all connected. Big boss man Robert Kraft, really good friends with Wick Grossbeck, goes to a lot of games. Everything is always connected in this city, and I always love that the teams really interact with each other and get along pretty well. But the biggest thing that you look at when a team wins a championship is you get a little bit FOMO as an employee of the Patriots. Like, how do we get there, right? And there's two different thought processes there that I had to cross sports here for a second. The first one, it just shows the importance of the draft in any sport.
And in the NBA, where you could argue it's the least, it's potentially the least impactful draft
in terms
of all
depth,
four sports. Or just in terms of, like, the NBA, there's more proof than any other league that you can build a sustainable championship team without drafting well.
That's fair.
And the Celtics still managed to. I mean, that was a relatively homegrown championship. Even the guys they brought in late, Porzingis and Holiday, they move homegrown players, Robert Williams and Marcus Smart, to get.
Yeah.
So, I would say if you can win a draft and develop championship in basketball right now, you can win a draft and develop championship in any sport.
And honestly, it used to be in basketball. I shouldn't say that. It's not always that way. But a lot of the times you do see in the NBA, like your point, you do see a lot of those mercenary championships.
Yeah, exactly.
But recently in the NBA, it's been the Celtics, it's been Jokic, it's been the Warriors, it's been Giannis. Like, they have had a lot of draft and develop championships, which is great for the league and great for the sport. But to bring it back to football, you do have to see a parallel brewing a little bit, which is number 3 overall picks, right? The Celtics drafted both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown 3rd overall. The NBA draft, Drake May was the 3rd overall pick for the Patriots. And the Patriots, as much as I hope and pray that they surprise us next year and they're a little bit better than we all expect, there's a very good chance that they're going to be picking at high in the draft again next year. And if you start hitting these drafts out of the park, like the Celtics did with those back-to-back picks, the Celtics have been a relevant championship caliber team, or at least contending team. I don't know about championship caliber, but playoff caliber contender since drafting the Jays. They've been every single year. They've been in the Eastern Conference Finals. They've been knocking on the door, and then they finally get over the hump. So the point being is that you can become extremely irrelevant extremely quickly if you draft well, in both sports, as it seems. So that was my first parallel. The second one, which I think is something that we've talked about a lot in the past, and that is the biggest thing the national media had against the Celtics. I know a lot of people are pulling receipts right now and doing that sort of thing. Even the Celtics are doing it on their social media. The biggest thing that a lot of the naysayers or the doubters of the Celtics were saying was that they didn't really necessarily have an all-time great player anchoring their team. They don't have a LeBron James. They don't have a Steph Curry. They don't have a guy that we're going to look back in 20 years and necessarily think is an all-time NBA great. And in that league especially, you usually have to win with an MVP. Like, it usually has to be Jokic. It has to be Giannis. So the question that bring it to football is really the only comparison in football is the quarterback position.
Right.
It's Jason Tatum's kind of the quarterback of the Celtics, and then the Patriots are another football team. It's the old net neutral thing, right? Can you win? The Celtics won because they have 6 top 50 players in the league, and they have great depth at the top of their roster and balance. Ask the San Francisco 49ers about trying to do that in the NFL.
Well, I mean, you've heard me compare, or I won't anymore, but you'd heard me compare for a long time the Celtics and the 49ers.
Yeah.
And it felt like there were some similarities there. Now, the difference is Celtics got over the top because, not in large part, but in some part, their coach figured it out.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big help. So, I still think it can be done, but it's not easy. None of it's easy. It's not easy the other way either. But the whole point, because I've had this take for a long time, is my belief was always it's easier to get 5 or 6 top 10 offensive skill position players than it is to get a top 5 quarterback, because evaluating the quarterback is so difficult and you need to be up there in the draft and on and on and on. Well, the Patriots were up there in the draft, and they got a guy that we think can be one of these potential MVP, annual MVP candidate quarterbacks in Drake May.
Right.
So that's the path they're on now. That's just that, I hope they don't do, well, they could end up doing the net neutral thing, I guess, but that shouldn't be the case, because Drake May should be more than that. So they've added that guy, and like you said, they might have a high pick next couple years, so they can add more players. But I still think it can be done with a net neutral quarterback in the NFL. The Niners should have probably figured it out by now, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
And they haven't. But the Patriots should not be the team to do that, because they've just set themselves on a different path.
Yeah, there's 2 teams that we always talk about with this, and other cowards use the Bills as an example for the Celtics as well, because of their
Bills ain't doing that.
Close but no cigars, right, for them as well. But I tried to look to really hash out this take. I tried to look and find a quarterback in the league that I felt like was comparable to Jason Tatum, because Jason Tatum is not a net neutral player.
Absolutely not.
Jason Tatum's a superstar.
Yeah.
But everybody can consensusly say Jason Tatum is a superstar and he's a great player in the league. He's just probably not the best player in the league, right?
Right.
The quarterback position is a little bit different. I think you would probably say it's like a little bit like Josh Allen, right? But
no, I have my Josh Allen comp is and has been Joel Embiid.
Okay, so you think that Tatum is I mean, I don't know. It depends on how you look at it then, because Joel Embiid's won an MVP.
Well,
in the
so
league,
I was actually my brother had this take, and it was interesting. It was this was prior to them winning the title.
Yeah.
He kind of had some Lamar Jackson, where just unbelievable in the regular season, but it took his toll because he had to play so physically that you'd see him drop off a little bit in the playoffs. And I think what Tatum did so well this playoffs was when teams were triple teaming him, when teams were taking other things away, he found other ways to be impactful. And you look at kind of how teams defend Lamar differently in the playoffs, and there's some similarities there. Now, Lamar is an MVP. Jason Tatum doesn't. Lamar has multiple MVPs. I don't want to shortchange him. But
that was the problem, is I thought about Lamar because of the knocking on the door and not getting over the top yet. But Lamar's won 2 league MVPs.
Right, and he hasn't won a title. And
Right.
that's where it's so hard, because you don't want to if you're going to do this, you don't want to shortchange Tatum. So you want to give him a comp for somebody who has a title.
Right.
But Mahomes is winning all of them. And, I'm a big Jason Tatum fan.
It's not
Mahomes. Right. So, do you have to go back in history a little bit? Maybe, if you go to – now I'm trying to think. Because it's all just Mahomes and Brady. They won
I
all
mean,
of
even
them.
the guy like Aaron Rodgers won multiple league MVPs and
Right.
things like that. But the point I'm getting at is you mentioned the 49ers,
Yeah.
which I do think there are some parallels there, because it's just the pure roster talent is what carries the 49ers.
Right.
But the Brock Purdy is not Jason Tatum.
No.
He's Jason Tatum's a much better player in his sport
yeah.
than Brock Purdy is.
Yeah.
So, and then you get into some of those guys that just don't have the career, like a Herbert or someone like that who's got the raw talent but doesn't have the career resume that Tatum has.
Right.
So it's tough. It was tough to find a quarterback where I felt like, that's a comparable player in the NFL.
How about
to Jason Tatum? But go ahead.
I just got one. And he doesn't have a title, but, I think he will at some point soon, whether it's this year or in the future. And kind of similar starts their careers, very talented. Injuries probably limited their ceiling early on and shaped the way people see him as a player. High draft picks, decorated college players. Joe Burrow.
So Joe Burrow, I feel like, is probably the best comp for a career resume-wise, because Joe Burrow lost in the Super Bowl and Tatum up until this point lost in the finals in 2022. So that is a good comp. I do like that, and I do think that they both have a little bit of swagger, and relaxed confidence to them. They're not necessarily the biggest rah-rah guys or guys that are going to...
Not boisterous.
Yeah, exactly. But I always feel like this is... we're crossing sports, and I totally get that.
No, I even have a cross-sports take on this.
That isn't perfect, but I feel like it was a little difficult. Burrow's a good one. We'll see if Burrow gets over the hump, but he had a lot of early career success and lost in the championship round and all that kind of stuff, so I can be sold on Burrow. I just find it interesting that the Celtics team really won as a team.
Yeah.
And I was listening to some of the national podcasts, and some of the people that had MVP votes for the finals were just beside themselves that they had to vote for one of the Jays and not the other. They really felt like it was a complete toss-up, and I just wonder if that is possible in football. To just really win with balance and not necessarily with the top quarterback. Like you can trace in basketball a lot of the championships back to all-time great players, MVP players. In football, a lot of the championships are tied to all-time great quarterbacks.
Right.
So it's pretty similar in that regard. But that scratched the itch for 15 minutes on my need to talk about the Celtics, and then we can get into the weeds about the Patriots. But did you have anything?
Yeah, just on it as a whole, I've had this long-standing take that the total run of Boston sports starting in the early 2000s, it's not a coincidence that all 4 teams got good at the same time.
No.
Because like you said, all the teams communicate. They all, do things with each other. There's a lot of interaction. But at the end of the day, they are, to an extent, competing businesses.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a family of 4 and you're looking to go to a game and you budget, we're going to go to, 1 game a year, who's getting your money? Is it the Patriots? Is it the Red Sox? Is it the Celtics? Is it the Bruins? And there's a level of competition there within them. It's friendly competition, definitely, but they are competing businesses. Same thing for buying jerseys or this or that or whatever. Which one are you going to really commit to? And I think what happened was, and some of the people who were around at that time have talked about this to an extent, when the Patriots won in 01 and then again in 03, everybody else had to we got to step up. We don't want to get left behind. And then the Red Sox start winning. The Celtics won in 08, and after that, you notice a notable push of aggression from the Bruins because they're looking around like, we can't be the last ones left. We can't be with that, right? So, we just went 5 years without a title. It's the second longest drought since the Patriots started playing in 1960.
Yeah.
As long as Boston has had 4 teams, we had, 16 years between the 86 Celtics and the 01 Patriots. And then that 5-year gap we just had, and that's it. So
we lived it tough in the 90s. Us 90s babies.
Oh, yeah.
It was tough.
Real tough.
I was 3 years old, but it was still
Only
tough.
got to see one Super Bowl appearance.
One Super Bowl appearance. The Celtics were terrible when I was a young kid. The Red Sox had the Pedro or late 90s.
Well, that's the late
teams.
90s. Like you're starting to get going because even the late 90s Celtics, you had Pierce, you had Antoine Walker.
Yeah, and
like,
I was way too young for like the Camp Neely Bruins and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
But like just the point being, and I'm not saying that none of the teams have been urgent to win a title, but like here we go again.
Yeah.
Can this kind of spark we got it, look at this because the Celtics are poised to not be done.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the team that has to be feeling it is the Bruins.
Absolutely.
The Bruins are the ones because even though it's gotten better, I believe, between those two teams over the years, there's a rivalry there. 110%.
Completely. And
they've gotten better. You see Bruins players at Celtics games, Celtics players at Bruins
it's
games.
never been with the players, but
No.
you have now they have the longest drought.
Yeah.
They have the longest drought. You got to go back to 2011. Patriots and Red Sox are 18. So I'm curious to see if this starts like a second generation push towards like, well, we don't want to get left behind when this is all going on.
Yeah. Last thing for me on this, and then we can talk real football here. The one of the great things about the last let's call it week in Boston sports, if we put the Brady celebration in this as well. Drake May has been at Tom Brady's Hall of Fame induction ceremony, Patriots Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and Game 5 of the NBA Finals. I believe he was there the other night, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
he has watched the GOAT be just showered with everything he deserved, right? And then he's watched the Celtics celebrate a championship on their home court. You hope that those two things have put into perspective for him where he is now in his life in terms of being the quarterback of the Patriots, and you hope that that's something that drives him a little bit competitively, not necessarily based off of what we were just talking about, but more so just I want in, I want to be a part of this.
I go back to Al Horford said in his post-game press conference on Monday night that he remembered in his free agent meeting with Danny Ainge. Danny told him, you can win a championship in a lot of places, but there's nothing like winning a championship in Boston.
Yeah.
And that used to be a very popular sentiment around here. You would hear players from all four sports talk about that all the time. Obviously, we hadn't won a championship in a little bit, so that kind of, that's kind of gone away. But, like, that would be the message I hope Drake May's taken away from all of this. Is, like, winning here is special. It's different. It's not this. You're not going to experience that elsewhere. Get it done. Get it done here. None of those guys on the Celtics will ever pay for a drink or a dinner the rest of their life in the city of Boston. Not that they need that, but the point being, like, you win here. You can be. I mean, Jordan Walsh is getting celebrated. I have friends text me about Jordan. Nothing against Jordan Walsh, but he didn't play, right? You can be the star of the team. You can be the 53rd player on the roster. You can be on the practice squad.
Yeah.
You win here, that's for life.
Yeah.
That's for life, and not just in passing. That's for life. We can go on and on. You know me. I can talk 10 minutes about Mike Cloud. So that's the message I hope Drake May's got in his first couple weeks here is winning here is not like winning other places. It's intense. It's for life.
You know, he's never going to buy a drink again in his life person. My dad. My dad is always, if we've, the rare occasion, but it has happened a few times that we've seen a Boston athlete at a restaurant or something like that. And my dad's always like, I hope he's not buying his drinks,
Yeah.
He's big on that. I remember one time when I was a kid, we saw Derek Lowe at an Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
And my dad wanted to pay for his whole meal. And I was like, Dad, he's making millions of dollars playing in the MLB. He has a lot more money than you do. You don't need to buy
that
him
man.
dinner.
That man became the first pitcher in MLB history to win the clinching game of the divisional series, the championship series. Right?
He's a legend.
Or is it win or start? Something like that.
He's a legend. Don't get me wrong, and I totally understand where you're coming from. But there's a picture of 16-year-old me with Derek Lowe. Floating around my old Facebook or something like that. But anyways, hey Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for New England's for the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Oh my goodness, not doing well with this today. Toyota, let's go places. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. You can call in 855-PATS-500. webradio@patriots.com is the email address. Really quickly before we start, remember Carrie last week that got mad at me for
British thing? Yeah.
She emailed in and apologized and said that she
very nice.
is sorry and regrets it a little bit that she sent that email. So I appreciate that, Carrie. I wanted to read that, and no hard feelings whatsoever.
Very
and
nice.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in London. I would come to one of the shows or something that we do over there. I'm not sure if we're going to do shows, but whatever we're doing over there, you're more than welcome to come. And 855-PATS-500, like I said, if you want to call in. But first thing that we wanted to do today, Patriots-wise, was reset some of our thoughts on the holes on the roster. What are the biggest weaknesses on this team right now after the spring? We've had a chance, Alex and I both have had a chance to watch this team in the spring and kind of get a gauge for where they're at, in terms of their roster and things like that. And I'll preface this by saying we realize that their roster has a long way to go in a lot of ways. Like, we understand that this is not we're not in the prime Patriots territory anymore, where we can sit there and say that the third cornerback spot is going to prevent them from winning a Super Bowl. We get that the roster has a lot of work across the board, but we're just talking about
just to get through the season.
Places that, to get through the season, things that they could do maybe between now and the start of training camp, or even really start of regular season, to make them more competitive this year. And we have some ideas of players they might target or guys that are available they can go after. So I'm going to go from the bottom of my – I have 4. I wanted to get to 5.
Oh, I didn't rank them. I just had –
No, I just have 4 written down. But I'll go to the bottom of my list and go to the top, because I think, the top 2 –
we're probably going to have a lot of overlaps. You just give your 4 and then I'll add if I have
the top 2 are everybody feels the same way with left tackle and wide receiver 1. Like, I feel like that's the top 2
Yeah,
for
but
everybody.
realistically, you're not adding either of those.
That's fair. But I have a couple of other ones that are a little bit more realistic, and then we'll get to those too.
Okay.
The first one, and I know I've pounded the table for this maybe a little bit too much. I probably repeated myself a lot on this. Third running back. I still feel like third running back is a need for them. Is Kevin Harris going to be a guy that he's had some flashes in his very limited career opportunities, but they really don't have a proven NFL running back behind Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. And as we've seen in the past, running backs will drop like flies once you get into the season. The war of attrition always catches up to running backs. We saw it last year where they had to basically force feed Zeke for the last couple games there when Ramondre went down with an injury, and you lose Ramondre or Antonio Gibson out of that backfield, and you're awfully thin back there with proven NFL talent. And as always in the running back market, there are some guys that you'll recognize the name when I read the name off that are still available this time of year. The big one's Dalvin Cook, who probably is toast.
I was going to say, recognize the name doesn't mean they're good.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Dalvin Cook, I would say, is probably toast. Just based off of what he did last year. The one thing the Patriots might have gotten right with their roster management in the last, let's call it 2 years, was Zeke over Dalvin Cook. They were 100% right about that one. Zeke was the fresher, better player. So
which, by the way, was something we had talked about on this show like months before they signed.
Yeah.
Zeke.
So theoretically, let's just play the game. Dalvin Cook, if he was even 75% of what he used to be, is actually a really good fit in this offense, in this and Alex Van Pelt scheme. They basically ran the same offense in Minnesota.
Right.
Wide zone, Norv Turner ran it there, and the Turners, Scott Turner also ran it there in Minnesota. It's basically the same offense. So the years that Dalvin Cook had early on in his career with the Vikings, he'd be playing in the same type of scheme if he was signed by the Patriots. So that's the only reason why I feel like that's even a remote possibility, because I think he's washed. I think he's probably done. But the point is that they do have an offense that is very much catered to his type of skill set if he does have anything left in the tank. A couple of other names that are out there in free agency right now, Cam Akers, who had that torn Achilles a couple years ago and hasn't really been the same guy since. Obviously, there's some things to unpack with Kareem Hunt. That I don't know if this organization is going to go near. But Kareem Hunt played in Cleveland with Alex Van Pelt. There's an obvious connection there. A couple other names. I've always loved Jet McKinnon. I think Jet McKinnon, though, is the third down back, and I don't know if that's necessarily what they're going to be looking for. He's probably they're probably looking for an early down guy.
I also liked him a couple years ago. He's 32 now. That's old for a running back.
Yeah, I just always loved his game. I always felt like he would have been a good Patriot.
Here's the keyword would have been. I think they may have missed the boat on that one.
Yeah, the last one here quickly, Matt Breida, who's played in Miami. He's played in San Francisco. He's played in similar types of offenses in those places and has that one cut, speed and burst type of thing. And there's always a chance that one of these veteran running backs shakes free, whether it's post June 1, whether it's in training camp, they fall out of favor, whatever the case may be. So that's a list of running backs, but I think we're both in agreement that they could use somebody that it's not necessarily just about name recognition. It's mostly just let's get somebody in the building that has some NFL experience and some carries in the league under his belt that you can use as a sample size. Because right now it's JaMychal Hasty, it's Kevin Harris, it's the 2 undrafted rookies. There's not a whole lot of proven talent there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Hasty had a good spring for whatever that's worth, and he's obviously going to give you some special teams value as well. But no, I'm with you. Adding a third proven NFL caliber running back, I think, is something this team should be looking at. And it's not that unusual at this point. Like, a lot of teams do this. They wait until camp because the backs don't want to do a full camp. The older backs don't want to do it. So, but that's definitely a spot they can add.
Yep. All right. So my second one on the list is going to be your favorite. Kicker.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to an extent that they drafted a kicker in the 4th round last year. They also have Joey Sly, who's been an NFL kicker and has some decent years under his belt in the NFL. It still feels like kicker is a potential weak point. And if you do want to talk a glass half full approach with this team right now, which I understand for some is hard to do, but if you do want to take that approach, if they're going to win games they shouldn't be winning,
right,
they're going to be close games. It's not like they're going to go out there and blow out the Bengals in week 1, right? So if they're going to win some of these games that are closer games, then they're going to have to win games like they did in Denver last year where Chad Ryland made the game-winning kick as time was expiring. So the kicker can be a big deal when you're winning on the margins like that. If you're coming down to the wire and you need a 51-yarder to win the game and you need a clutch kick in the 4th quarter to put you ahead. So I still feel like kicker is a major need. I thought that Chad Ryland looked exactly the same as last year in the spring, which was not very good, frankly, pretty shaky in the spring. And I think you wonder with Joey Sly if he's got what is his ceiling?
I mean, they just didn't give him a ton of opportunities, so I wonder how invested they are in him potentially being the guy. I think so first of all, NFL kickers, there's really only one free agent, and it's Randy Bullock.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk
right because McManus has his.
McManus is you're not touching it. That's it. That's really it for guys with like significant NFL experience. You have to go to the UFL for this one. I know we clearly pumped Jake Bates enough because people were upset.
They were upset
when the Lions signed him. But like the whole point of that conversation, Jake Bates was the one name. But if you listen to what we were saying, there were a lot of good kickers in the UFL. Yeah. If you take out, so there was one guy, Ryan Santoso, who was a backup. And if you take out what he did, collectively, UFL kickers hit on 85% of their kicks. The last 2 years in the NFL, the league average, 85%.
It's pretty good.
So these are average NFL kickers. The one name I go to is Matt Coughlin, who was the kicker for Memphis this year. And he's actually been in the spring the last 2 years. He was 18 of 19 2 years ago kicking for New Orleans. Last year was 16 of 18, 12 of 12 inside of 50.
Yeah.
So reliable. And he kicked at Michigan State, where his holder for part of the time was Bryce Behringer. So you already have a connection there. And that, like, holder-kicker connection matters because not every hold is the same. Kickers want the ball held differently for different kicks. So, can help them get caught up a little quicker. The other names, Andre Smith was really good this spring, 19 of 21, but he was kicking in St. Louis, which is indoors. In college, he kicked at Syracuse, which is indoors. So, you wonder about that factor. And then Jonathan Garibay was the only other guy that was over 90%. He was 13 of 14, and his only miss was a block, and it was a breakdown, like blocking breakdown, so it wasn't on his fault. But he didn't attempt to kick longer than 48 yards. So that's, if you want to go back to the Belichick, when he signed Nick Folk, and it was, we're not going to attempt long field goals. We just want you automatic from inside of 50.
Right.
That's Garibay. But if they want a bigger leg, Matt Coughlin is the guy that I would encourage Patriots fans to look into.
It's interesting because when you really think about it, the kicker spot is not all that different league to league.
You're doing the same thing.
You're doing like you have a leg, right?
Again, to go back to Garibay, like he missed one kick. It's because it was blocked. It's because the protection broke down.
Right.
It was a 31-yard kick. It's not like he kicked it too low.
The lights are brighter in the NFL. There's more people watching. It's a bigger deal, no doubt about it. And then, yes, on the margins, I would assume that the kick rush is a little bit faster in the league than it would be in like the UFL. But in general, if you can kick, you can kick.
Right.
I feel like that's the most translatable thing from that league to this league because at the end of the day, it's just the kicker standing there, teeing off, right?
Yeah.
And there's really no difference there. I think that it's the one thing, and Nick Folk came from a stint in those leagues.
Yeah, the AAF.
The spring league, as Bill called it.
They call it the World League.
The World League, World League, as he called it at the time. So there's some translatable scouting that you can do there with kickers. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like in terms of other positions on the roster. The Patriots signed a guard from the UFL as well. It seems like there's a decent amount of interior offensive linemen that might be in NFL camps. Doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of tackle talent. The NFL has no tackle talent, so these leagues are going to have even less tackle talent. But I don't know how much that's going to translate. Hakeem Butler,
right.
dominated the UFL. Wade Phillips is coming off the field with them saying, we got to get you into an NFL camp. Ex-receiver, high draft pick in the league, a really talented player coming in through college, just didn't pan out.
I mean, he probably is a fringy NFL player. Like, he was with that bad Cardinals team.
Yeah.
So there might still be something to tap into there, but he's not going to be that guy in the NFL. He'll be like a, fourth or fifth receiver,
right.
Probably red zone specialist, that kind of thing.
Man, if Hakeem Butler goes from the UFL and makes himself into an NFL player, like a legit NFL player, draft Twitter is going to take victory lap on victory lap because how many people I remember in that draft class, and I was pretty high on Hakeem Butler too, if I remember correctly coming out, but there were some people that were really high on Hakeem Butler coming out of college, Des Bryant high. That was sort of the comp I always remember with him as the ceiling of what he could be in the league, and that did not come to fruition.
And it's just going to be another chance for people to pile on Cliff Kingsbury.
That's also fair. So that was those are my two spots that I feel like they could probably address the easiest, or there's maybe the most options, running back and kicker. And then you're still in the same boat with wide receiver and tackle, and there are some veteran free agent tackles that are out there that I would think if you get into a position, let's say in August, 2 weeks into camp, those first 15 padded practices before the first preseason game. If the Patriots are in a spot where Chuks Okorafor is just not cutting it, or their right tackle options are just not cutting it, and they start to grow concerned about that, that's when I think the David Bakhtiaris, the Donovan Smiths, the DJ Humphreys, Charles Leno, those guys that are still out there kicking around on the veteran tackle market, that's probably about where they would sign one of those guys. You would think.
Yeah.
And that though to me is still, you're still not talking about a solution there. It's more of a backup plan. And I know Bakhtiari is probably the best out of that group, and he was an awesome player when he was at his peak, but he hasn't been healthy for multiple seasons. It's been a while since he's played a full gamut of games, and he's talked about it publicly that he's ready to go and he wants to play and that sort of thing. But you also have to think that if he does come back, it's going to be to a situation where he might be able to chase a ring. I don't know where. Maybe he goes. They signed Tyron Smith, so they're probably set. But like the Jets with Aaron Rodgers seems like an obvious one to go back and play with Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know if the Patriots are in the position to track the guy like Bakhtiari, assuming he's healthy. But
I just don't think he's healthy either.
Yeah, those are some names though, and Humphreys is coming off an injury too. That's why he's still available. But that if it's really truly not working out with Chuks Okorafor as a 1-year stopgap, those guys that all have left tackle experience are all available. So I don't think it's a complete barren market at tackle. But all of those guys come with major age or injury question marks, which is why they're still available.
Bakhtiari's played 13 games in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
I think if he
he's
was
been hurt
healthy,
a lot.
he'd be in Green Bay. I mean, I look at Leno, like there's some guys that are fine, but it's going to be tough. I don't think the answer, like people have said, just sign Bakhtiari. No, if you can play left tackle, you're on a roster at this point. I don't think the answer's out there right now. If anything, maybe at guard. And I just want to pull my list up here, but like with the Cole Strange injury, and they were shuffling guards a lot in the spring. I look at the list of free agent guards. The big one for me, and he can actually play some tackle as well, but I don't know at this point in his career. Justin Pugh is a free agent, and he played for Ben McAdoo in New York.
Yeah.
So there's a connection there. Mark Lewinsky, Trey Turner, Tyree Phillips. These are guys that started multiple games last year, which is more than you can say about any of the free agent tackles except Donovan Smith, who was really bad. So I think, if anything, at guard to help them fill in. And, are you going to get 17 games out of Justin Pugh? Probably not. Can you get 7 or 8 games out of Justin Pugh till Cole Strange comes back? That's a lot more realistic.
Well,
I'll give you one more, too. Sorry, the reason I just zoned out, I went down this rabbit hole. So I was looking at that 2019 Arizona Cardinals coaching staff.
oh, yeah.
And I'm looking to see who else on the staff. It's the offensive line. Sean Kugler.
Yeah.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So I go to his page. He was actually just the offensive line coach for the DC Defenders in the UFL. The Patriots just signed Liam Fornadell from the DC Defenders, who will now in New England be coached by assistant offensive line coach Robert Kugler, who is Sean Kugler's son. Look at that.
It's pretty crazy. Even in the draft, and usually, for whatever reason, I usually find these things out after they draft the guy.
Yeah.
When you go down these rabbit holes with the profiles that we do, which are honestly great because we learn so much about the players that they drafted through those. And a lot of these rabbit holes that you end up going down, you realize, especially the day 2 and day 3 guys, not necessarily like the 3rd overall pick in the draft, but the day 2 and the day 3 guys, all of a sudden you start to see the 6 degrees of separation where it's like, oh, wow, this guy played at this high school, then with this college, and there's 17 different Patriots ties between these two programs, or something along those lines. I remember with Marcus Jones, for instance. Marcus Jones at Houston, his DB's coach played with Steve Belichick at Rutgers.
That's right, yeah.
Like, they were both at Rutgers at the same time. And you hear these connections, and you're just like, oh, well, obviously that guy is on their board. We probably had Marcus Jones on our board anyway because of his versatility. But in general, the point being is that there's a lot of that stuff that goes around the league. Guard, I feel the same way about guard as I do kicker. They have thrown so many darts at guard in the last couple years that if they are still looking for guards, then they're in trouble. They're in trouble.
Well, but they might be. Like,
They should be able to find between Sidiso, Onwenu, Nick Leverett. They should be able to find some guys that can play on the inside. And honestly, if they can't, I would say that more points towards coaching than personnel.
Fair.
Because I'm not putting any. We both hold Dante Scarnecchia in the highest regard. And I know I talk about him all the time, but Dante Scarnecchia was taking college wrestlers and turning them into viable NFL guards. You can find guards. And if this team, with all the assets that they've thrown at guard and interior offensive line, can't find 2 playable guards on the roster that they have right now, then I'd start to worry about what's going on with the coaching staff, because you should be able to coach up the guys that you have here to play guard for you. And it is interesting, though, just to connect it to Cole Strange quickly.
Yeah.
It does feel a little bit like his job might not be here when he comes back, especially if they settle with Onwenu being inside with Sidiso at left guard. And that whole situation still fascinates me because he is a decent fit in what they want to do. He's probably one of the better fits that they have in terms of skill set with his athleticism. But it'll be interesting to see if he even has a job when he comes back. And you talk about guards, that was a big asset that they sunk into guard.
Can we go back to the kickers real quick?
We can.
Remembered I had one more point I wanted to make on that because we went on the UFL tangent. So there are some of the UFL free agents, right? But the other thing the Patriots can do, so I put out my roster projection last week, and I had for kicker TBD.
Yeah, me
as
too.
in essentially
We copied each other on
the,
that one.
the week one kicker is, I think we talked about this last week, like the week one kicker is not on the roster right now. So obviously they could sign one of these UFL guys again if you want to do your research at home. Andre Schmidt, it's not smelled like regular Schmidt, SZMYT if you can't find him. Matt Coughlin, Jonathan Garibay, JJ Molson, those would be the 4 guys to look up, mainly Coughlin. The other thing the Patriots can do, and this might annoy some people, but this is just where they're at, they could essentially do the reverse of what they did last year. And remember, they had 2 kickers in camp, and they both looked like they both, for different reasons, had chances to make the roster. They were going to keep one, despite what I was kind of saying, and they ended up trading Nick Folk for a 7th-round pick. So I went and I looked, and I did a whole thing on the kickers on 98.5thesportshub.com. You can check that out. There are, besides Patriots, 12 teams right now with multiple kickers on their roster, not including teams with IPP players. There are 2 teams, the Lions and the Packers, that actually have 3 kickers. Actually, I think the Packers have 4. But can you imagine if we covered a team with 4 kickers, how much fun that would be? You would love that so much.
How much fun that would be is not how
you would enjoy that. You would really. It's the Packers, so Packer way, 4 kickers. Just saying. But no, the point I'm making is, as camp gets underway, as the preseason gets underway, if you're somebody who's looking for the Patriots to make an outside addition at kicker, you want to follow this. Look at the teams with multiple kickers and see what's going on. And do any teams end up in a position where it's very clear both guys are NFL kickers and they're not both going to make the team, and either one gets cut and you sign them or you trade a pick? Maybe you flip the pick you got for Nick Folk. It's a 7th-round pick. Maybe you flip that pick and get one of these kickers. And specifically what I looked at, Evan, is the teams with rookie kickers that have multiples. So you have the Lions have 3. You have Jake Bates joining James Turner, who's UDFA, and Michael Badgley. Michael Badgley's an NFL kicker.
Yeah.
Like, he's been good. They're not going to keep both Jake Bates and Michael Badgley. Probably not. So assuming they're both decent, you look there. Some of them are a little more obvious. The Rams have Joshua Carty, who they drafted, and Tanner Brown. Josh Carty's a better kicker. He's going to make that team, but maybe Josh Brown shows something this summer out of nowhere. The Vikings, Will Riker, John Parker, Romo, etc. Here's where it gets a little more interesting. The Titans, they have Nick Folk. They also have Braden Naverson, who is a UDFA out of North Carolina State, who is one of the top kickers in this class. Maybe Narveson shows up, and they're like, they do the same thing the Patriots did. Nick Folk's old. We have a young kicker, and maybe you send the 7th-round pick back, and you get Nick Folk back. The Carolina Panthers have Eddie Pinheiro, who's an NFL kicker. He's been a good kicker the last 2 years, one of the best players on the Panthers, and Harrison Mevis, who was the kicker from Missouri.
The fact that you know all these people is wild.
Don't you knock the thicker kicker. 5'11",
Nope.
250 pounds.
The what?
The thicker kicker. Look him up. Look at a picture of him.
So
Harrison Mevis.
He's a
a big boy, but
bigger
he's
guy.
got a bigger leg.
I don't want to use the other word. That's
He
rude.
had a 64.
No body shaming on this program.
He had a 64-yard game winner against Florida this year. He doesn't warm up. That's another. He's got all these quirks. He's a good kicker. Harrison Mevis. Eddie Pinheiro, good kicker.
I remember he's got the glasses, right?
Pinheiro? No, does he? He might.
I think he does. I know the name Eddie Pinheiro though. He's been around.
Well, there was also an Eddie Pinheiro who was a baseball reliever, so you might be thinking of him. But no, Eddie Pinheiro, the kicker, does not wear glasses. I'm looking at it right now. No, but he's he's fine. He's a good kicker. Panthers not going to keep both of those guys. And again, you have the Lions with Jake Bates and Michael Badgley.
You say he's fine?
Yeah, he's fine. He doesn't need the glasses. He can hit kicks. So he's no not Roberto Aguayo. Blankenship. What was his name?
Yeah.
Not Rodrigo. Yeah, Rodrigo Blankenship.
Yeah.
Which, remember that whole spring, I told you people Tyler Bass. I told you people to stop falling for the meme kicker, and the meme kicker's not in the league anymore. Tyler Bass, the only player on the Bills I can tolerate. I told you that. So listen to me. Don't make fun of Harrison Mevis. Listen to me when we talk about kickers. The point being, these are the teams. There's a couple more. The Browns have 2 kickers. The Cardinals, the Colts, the Jets, and the Steelers. These are going to be battles to watch when camp starts, because if the Patriots don't sign one of these UFL kickers and they end up needing another kicker, this is where that guy's coming from. It's one of these 12 teams that has 2 kickers, and it's going to be one of those guys, and a couple of these battles will come down to the wire. I think, again, the Panthers, the Lions, maybe the Jags, Cam Little and Riley Patterson. That's where you're going to find your kickers. That's where you need to look.
I can promise you, and I feel pretty confident in saying this, that there's not going to be a single other Patriots podcast that's going to do as extensive a deep dive.
That's why we're here.
Into the available kickers than what you just got. So just remember all the names that Alex just threw at you, all the Eddie Pineros and all the, what's the thick kicker?
Thicker kicker, Harrison Mevis, 985sportshub.com. It's all right. 3 options
and
for the
just
Patriots at
this,
kicker.
That this is all available to you.
Do you remember the 12 teams, Evan?
No.
Do you remember, can you give me 3 of them?
Panthers?
Yep.
Titans?
Yep.
49ers?
No.
I thought you said the 49ers
No.
had multiple kickers.
No.
Packers.
Packers have 4. It's Packers, Lions,
Bears,
Browns,
Tigers. No, just kidding.
Bears. All right, whatever. There's 12 teams, not including the Patriots.
Oh my goodness. All right. So there's your kicker minute. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it?
I mean, that's what that's a lot of people want to talk about this. You guys were I got a lot of mentions, a lot of tags after the Jake Bates signing. So clearly people were fired up about that.
I know. I think it was on the weekend, right, when he signed. So I was.
Not only was it the weekend, I think it was like right before. Yeah, it was right before Game 4 tipped off.
Oh, I just know I was off the grid and I came back to my phone and I was like, oh man, what happened?
It was right before Game 4 and everybody was upset. I remember thinking, wow, if they're upset now, because then the Game 4 started. I was like, wow, if they're upset about Jake Bates, wait till they see what the Celtics are doing.
All right, so we talked about kickers extensively, running backs, tackles. Those are still the biggest needs. Wide receiver, which I agree with you, tackle and wide receiver. The answer is probably not coming this season or now.
Yeah.
Maybe at the trade deadline, maybe, but we're probably not there yet. To relate it almost back to the beginning, our conversation at the top of Crossing Sports with the Celtics, the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk fascinate me because
he's not leaving.
If I was the 49ers, and I've said this before, if I was the 49ers, I am 100% doubling down on this core and continuing to keep that door open to win a championship. And there's no way I'm starting to cast off pieces at this point. If you decide in another year or two that Brock Purdy's just never going to get you there and you're going to need to reconfigure, maybe pay a veteran quarterback, and that's going to change things for you, then sure, you can go a different route there. But right now, if you're the 49ers, I still don't understand how Brandon Ayuk is not under contract on an extension.
Right.
I still don't understand why they haven't paid that guy. And I've said it on Tuesday, outside of McCaffrey, when I know that's like a big caveat, like outside their best player, Brandon Ayuk is their best receiver on the team. He's better at this point than Debo and George Kittle are in this stage of their career. So Brandon Ayuk, to me, is what's keeping that window fully open for them. So with that being said, there's obviously a chance that Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers cannot come to an agreement on an extension and the trade happens there. And all the reporting out of Cincinnati and even Rap Sheet and Schefter have, once T. Higgins signed the franchise tag in Cincinnati, they made it sound like he's there for the year and that door is closed too. But I'm not completely sold on that either. He has to sign the tag to make him eligible for a trade. You can't trade a player that's not under contract. So he has got to sign the tag to make him eligible for a trade. He still wants a long-term extension. It still doesn't sound like it's coming from the Bengals.
Yeah.
And I still feel like there's a chance that he's becomes available at some point in the next, let's call it, couple months. I'm not sure it's going to be by the time week 1, the start of the season. But let's say Cincinnati goes into the year and they have Super Bowl aspirations. They're going to have a healthy Joe Burrow. We've talked about Joe Burrow's injury before. I've gotten it wrong once before. It's wrist.
Yes.
Got it right now. Let's say Joe Burrow is not the same guy. Let's say that Joe Burrow still struggles. Let's say they still struggle as a team. Is there a world where T. Higgins is moved at the trade deadline? I still think there is, because they can't let him walk for nothing. You can't let a talent of that caliber walk for nothing. So I still am in the school that I would rather Brandon Ayuk on this team than T. Higgins, just if I had my pick of the two. But I'm not greedy. I'll take either one of them with open arms. But I feel like from a schematic standpoint and just really, I just think Brandon Ayuk's a better player than T. Higgins is. But I just like Brandon Ayuk's fit in the offense a whole lot better. T. Higgins is a really high-end version of that type of player, that prototype, but he does have a very specific skill set of lining up on the boundary. I'm not going to get bogged down by XZ. I argued with Taylor about this when I was on Patriots Beat the other day. It's not so much about is he an X, is he a Z, is he an F. Like, it's not so much about that. He is a boundary receiver. He is an outside wide receiver, point blank. And he's got great size, jump ball ability. He boxes out at the catch point at the intermediate level. That's how he wins. In breaking routes with his frame, jump balls down the field. It's a very specific type of skill set. I don't know if it's super efficient in general. I know I'm bagging on T. Higgins a lot. He's a good player. But I wonder what his fit in this offense is. I wonder what his future is as the guy in an offense. Does he have it to be able to be a true number one? Not just your number one. It's sort of
that number one ace conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Is he that guy? I think Brandon Ayuk is an ace. I think Brandon Ayuk is probably a top 10 receiver in the NFL at this point. I don't know if T. Higgins is at that level.
Yeah, on Higgins, I'm kind of with you. I also just think if he's I look at the wide receivers that are available next spring, and I'll take my chance on waiting on T. Higgins unless I'm going to get him on a great deal. On Ayuk, and this has gone under talked about. I think maybe just because it's not as fun. But if you're the Niners, would you rather trade Brandon Ayuk? Say they can get a first-round pick for Brandon Ayuk. I'll be generous here. Would you rather trade Brandon Ayuk for a first-round pick or Deebo Samuel for a third-round pick? I'd rather trade Deebo.
Yeah.
He's older. He's been dealing with a ton of injuries later in his career. He's kind of a more, usage-specific player. His ceiling's going to fall off. And this was reported at the draft a lot, and I feel like everybody just pushed it down because they want to talk about Ayuk, that the Niners were at the time, who knows, this was months ago, but the Niners were going to look to trade Deebo before they traded Ayuk.
And the Patriots reportedly called.
Right.
I don't know how much interest.
And,
they
no,
really
they're
showed,
doing their due
they,
diligence.
Right.
I'm not gonna. I think they called on both. Like, I'm not gonna fault them for calling, but I have no interest in Deebo Samuel. I have the.
Oh, really?
What do you mean?
I'd take Deebo
for a top 100 pick.
I don't know if that's what it's going to take.
I've seen them enough times do this. Let's see if we can get the last drop out of the receiver who's in his late 20s, who is probably in a pretty favorable position, more favorable than he's going to be here, right? Just feels like Devontae Parker all over to me.
Oh, I think he's a much better player than Devontae Parker, though.
But is he? You look, he's signed for whatever it is, like 3 more years for a lot of money. Is he going to be? He's not going to. He's struggling to stay on the field. Deebo, I don't want this to come across as me disparaging Deebo Samuel's career. Yeah. Because at his peak, he was a tremendous...
He was a first-team All-Pro.
Yeah. Oh, and he was a unique player, and I think he kind of changed the way, at times, people view certain wide receivers. But if you look at, historically, the way wide receiver production drops off at the age... So Deebo's 28, turned 28 in January. Yeah. It's going to be his age 28 season. If you look at the way wide receiver production drops off historically at the age of 30, it's a steep cliff at the age of 30.
And he's had the running back
element. He's got more wear and tear than your average wide receiver.
There's no doubt about that.
When you factor in his contract, when you factor in the injury history, when you factor in his age.
I'm not giving up a huge asset for him, but it goes back
Let's say it takes a third-round pick.
I probably wouldn't give up a third-round pick just because realistically that's a top 75 pick. If we're going to be realistic about the Patriots and where they're headed this year, that's a top 75 pick. So it's similar to how I feel with Ayuk. If I was a contender at the back of the first round, I'd give up my first-round pick for Brandon Ayuk. Am I giving up a first-round pick for Brandon Ayuk as the Patriots when that first-round pick could be the 8th overall pick in the draft?
Higher.
Probably not. Well, if you have Brandon Ayuk, you would like to think that they win a couple more games than what we are projecting them to win right now.
That's all right. Yeah, that's true.
But
that's
still, it's going to be a top half of the first round pick, unless Drake May is C.J. Stroud, and it all just comes together.
That goes back to my point where now I'll just wait and see who's available next year because I would rather take my chances with that group than.
I just worry in general with the group next year, and
I also just think with Deebo.
Yeah.
And why I think it'll cost more than maybe some people expect. I don't. The Niners are in a position where they can just play this out and let these guys be free agents if they can't afford them. There's not a ton of incentive for them to get ahead of it because they're so competitive right now. So it's not just what is Debo worth. It's you have to make it worth the Niners moving on from him.
So the Niners are clearly positioning themselves to move on from some of their veteran guys at receiver because they drafted Ricky Pearsall. So the writing is on the wall for one of those guys that they're not going to be a Niner for long.
Right.
Because Ricky Pearsall is the first-round pick by San Francisco in this past draft. He plays a lot like both of those guys, really. Kind of those inside-outside, really good with the ball in his hands, a great route runner. Like that's a Niners receiver. So he's going to have a big role at some point in his career with San Francisco, or at least they're going to try to give him a big role. I don't know if he's going to live up to it, but we'll see.
Well, but why wouldn't you, if you're the Niners, just run it with all three and try to be better?
I probably would.
So that's what I'm saying.
But
you
the
have to
question
incentivize them to not do that.
Or you get into training camp, and I'm talking about San Francisco now. They get into training camp, and I wasn't necessarily somebody that bought as into the Ricky Pearsall hype as some people did, but let's just say they nailed Ricky Pearsall, and he's just awesome. And so then you get into training camp, and you're in a position where they are looking at it, and they're saying, there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunity for Deebo Samuel this year in this offense. He's making $20 million a year. He's already a guy that's expressed some disappointment or been disgruntled about his role, his contract, all that kind of stuff here in the past. It might just be best to just go in a different direction.
I guess.
I hear what you're saying in terms of the compensation. It would have to be the right compensation for a guy like that. You have to take all the things into consideration, injuries, wear and tear, all that kind of stuff. But I can't help but feeling how effective he could be in this offense because it's very similar to the one that he ran in San Francisco. But the biggest thing with Deebo to me is that Deebo, it's not necessarily that he needs to play pure running back. I don't think he needs, what he did in his all-pro season. He was lining up in the backfield 50, 60 times over the course of the season, I think it was. He doesn't necessarily need to do that for me to be in, but he needs to recognize that he is going to be a scheme touch guy. He's gonna be somebody that they're gonna try to get the ball in his hands, and that is going to mean breaking tackles, running through tackles, doing all the Deebo Samuel stuff, which has led to injuries and wear and tear for him, and which is why he's wanted to get away from that. He's not going to be an effective player. Deebo isn't being a pure receiver. He's just not good enough as a pure receiver to just run routes on the outside and win consistently and be a 1,000-yard guy. He's going to have to be a unique player like he's been in the past.
Right.
So if he buys into that sort of role and he's willing to be that guy he was a few years ago in terms of usage, then I still think that there's a couple good years left of Deebo Samuel in the tank. But you're right that I'm probably not giving up a top 100 pick, the Patriots' first 3 picks in next year's draft for much of anything at this point. I probably would for Ayuk, but I don't think
somebody's going to give up a first if he gets moved. I think one of those back end teams.
So the question is you start to talk about ranges, right, of where they could get the pick. The Patriots, if they project the Patriots are going to pick let's say their second round pick is top 40. So they could look at it and say we could get the 31st pick from Kansas City or the 30th pick from Buffalo or something like that. Or
Buffalo's pick's going to start with a 2 at least.
Okay, 28 from Buffalo.
All right.
And then we could get 35 from the Patriots, and maybe the Patriots are throwing in something else.
Like a 4th or 5th.
Right, that's going to be the equation for the Pats with all of that. So it's interesting with the receivers. You mentioned the receiver free agency next year. Devontae Smith already signed, so he's out of there.
That's not who I'm thinking
Jalen Waddle already signed.
Not who I'm thinking of.
So he's not going anywhere. Justin Jefferson's not going anywhere.
No, he's not going anywhere. Well, he signed.
I believe Brandon Ayuk's not going anywhere.
You don't look at who's a free agent next year. You look at who's entering an expiring contract next year.
Well, my point is that there's a lot of talk about that free agency class next year because it's all of those 2020, 2021
No, these guys
receivers.
don't. We know this. These
Jamar
guys,
Chase, I think, is technically a free agent.
No, they
That's
don't
not
hit.
happening.
Elite wide receivers don't hit free agency. You either got to draft them or trade for them.
Right.
That's because they're going to either re-sign with their teams or they're going to, A.J. Brown, get moved and get a new deal.
Right. So who's the guy you're thinking?
DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Seattle's kind of hitting reset.
You don't need to convince. You don't need to convince me on DK.
No,
Metcalf.
well,
He's
no,
one of my favorite players in the league.
But it's like, is he really going to be available? Seattle's kind of hitting a reset right now. It's a new staff in the front office, a new coaching staff.
Yeah.
The quarterback position's unclear. He may not be super thrilled about that. They
drafted Bo Nix, right?
No, it was Denver.
That's Denver.
Seattle's smarter than that. I'll give them credit. They're smarter than that.
Who did they drafted a quarterback, didn't they? Why? I don't know
so.
why.
Because we all thought they were going
for
to.
some reason, I get Denver and Seattle confused. I think it's because
weird because that's Super Bowl.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
They should have. I was kind of thinking they were going to draft Penix. That would have been sick. No, they traded for Sam Howell.
Okay.
Their quarterback room is Geno Smith, P.J. Walker, Sam Howell.
So they're in the quarterback market.
But they've drafted receivers, JSN,
yeah.
right? Dwayne Eskridge, Jake Bobo kind of popped off last year. So
Dwayne Eskridge stinks, but yeah, JSN is. They have JSN, but most people think that JSN is taking over for Tyler Lockett,
which
not
makes sense.
DK.
But my point being, like, is DK going to want to be there? And if not, that's the guy. Because you put you talk about
perfect
fit with the scheme, perfect fit with the quarterback. Like
quarterback is the main thing,
right? That's the guy to me. Like that is all we've talked about them getting aggressive for guys like Justin Jefferson. And these are different ranges, but guys like Justin Jefferson, guys like DeAndre Hopkins last year, all these receivers we wanted them to go all out for. A.J. Brown back in the day. We can go back to Steve Smith and Larry Fitzgerald. We've been chasing this thing. This is the guy.
DK.
This is the guy.
I love DK. The entire, not to pat myself on the back or take any victory laps with DK, but I really couldn't for the life of me not understand how DK was covered in the 2020 draft. Right, 2020, right?
19.
19.
Because it's N'Keal. It was the N'Keal Harrier, yeah.
The 2019 draft. He was the best receiver in that draft.
You know what
I just didn't. He had some injuries in college. That was the main reason why.
Well, no, you know what it was? It's that thing that I seem to be the only one that's figured this out, where sometimes a player, the measurables, the testing, it's too good to be true, and I think teams
he had injuries.
Stumble all over
He had a
themselves.
pretty significant back neck type of injury in college that knocked him out of a season, and then he also had like the world's worst 3-cone time at the combine that everybody made a big deal about of.
Right.
But he size, speed, explosiveness.
6'4", 230, ran a 4.33.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. So DK is a good one. I still feel like the A.J. Brown thing is possible because the Eagles,
I would take A.J. Brown.
That roster is gonna get expensive. It already is expensive. They're one of the highest payrolls in the league, just in real cash. A.J. Brown grew up a Patriots fan. We do that whole thing all over again if we want to. They've made him happy by throwing him those Matthew Judon raises over the last couple of years. But at some point, that's going to come to a head. They just paid Devontae Smith a whole lot of money. They're a draft and develop team. They're a team that's going to believe Howie Roseman's going to think, I'm just going to draft the next guy at some point. So I wonder if A.J. Brown's an option. Also a 2019 draft guy. Debo, 2019 draft guy. DK.
Why does A.J. Brown feel so much older than DK Metcalf?
I don't know. That's a you thing.
He does, right? No, is that just me?
He's only like 26.
It feels like he's been in the league much, maybe because he's played for multiple teams. It feels to me like he's been in the league way longer than DK Metcalf.
I also wonder.
They're both 26. They both came in the league at the same time, but.
Yeah. I also wonder, you mentioned like receivers at 30, which I know has been a thing. We might be extending that a little bit, just based off of obviously modern medicine, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. But just because of how receiver friendly the league is now, I wonder if it's going to be more like 31, 32 coming up soon. But either way, you get A.J. Brown or you get DK Metcalf.
They're both 26.
26.
And I think they're
so
both.
You get them at 27.
DK's entering his age 26 season. His birthday is in December. A.J. Brown he's entering his age 27 season. His birthday's in 10 days.
It's essentially the same timeline of Stephon Diggs in Buffalo.
Right.
And so just think about how great that was for Buffalo for the last 4 or 5 years. That's what you would be getting with that 2019 draft class type guy. Yeah, absolutely. But I just want to reiterate again, not that it's that important, but the guy, you look at the free agency class next year, it's absolutely out of this world stacked.
Yeah.
none of those guys are actually hitting free agency.
No. Do you know how many receivers last year, 30 or older, caught 50-plus passes?
I'm assuming it's not high, but I don't know.
9.
9.
And of those, 3 or 30, 4 or 31, and then Adam Thielen. So it's Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Adam Thielen, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, DeAndre Hopkins, who I was told was washed, Cooper Kupp, and Brandon Cooks. That's your over 50.
Brandon Cooks, man. Fountain of youth. That guy's never going to slow down.
I give you 2022 also. Yeah, no, Brandon Cooks, one of the most underrated players of his era. So
yeah.
In 2022, receivers 30 or older to catch over 50 passes, 6. Adams, Lockett, Thielen, Allen, Hopkins, Robert Woods.
We'll see. I just wonder if
it went
this and it's going to take a while to get there. You know, some of these guys are like 23 years old, so
right.
we're going to be here a while before we find out. But I do wonder if this new receiver renaissance that we're in right now, I wonder if at some point those guys can play for longer.
Okay, to be fair to you, so I'm backtracking here.
Yeah.
It has gone up the last 3 years. So in 2021, there were only 4 receivers 30 and older that caught at least 50 passes. Cole Beasley, Marvin Jones, Adam Thielen, A.J. Green. So we went from 4 to 6 to 9. So we'll see.
Summer is here, which means it's time to turn off that alarm and sleep in thanks to Bob's Discount Furniture. Save big by bundling Bob's Orthopedic mattresses with your choice of fantastic adjustable bases full of fun features like charging ports, underbed lighting, and Bluetooth speakers. So stop in and sleep better with Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture of the New England Patriots. And Bridgestone, the official tire of the New England Patriots, is proud to partner with Sullivan Tire, New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you. To get to some of these calls and emails, I do want to talk a little bit about our roster projections that we both put out recently as well, but let's get to the phones. Mark is in Connecticut. What's up, Mark?
What's going on, guys? You guys in a new room now?
Yeah.
Yeah, temporarily, but it looks pretty sweet, doesn't it?
Oh, hi, Mark.
It does look pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Just had a couple of takes for you guys. My thought is left tackle. I think they really need to draft a high-end left tackle next year. That's my personal opinion on it because they didn't get to do it this year. And then the other thing is I really like what I'm seeing out of Kayshon Boutte. I think we're going to see a really significant improvement and maybe even a breakout year from him. But my question is, Jalen Reagor, can we use him as a special teams guy so that way we can still keep 6 wide receivers? That's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Mark. I kind of segues nicely into the 53-man roster projections I wanted to touch on a little bit too. Jalen Reagor, to me, is exactly what Mark just said. I think he's on the team right now as a returner/receiver. That you start to get into the bottom, and this is also related a little bit to Kayshon Boutte too. You start to get into the bottom of the roster at receiver, 4, 5, 6, those spots. If you're not going to contribute in the kicking game in some capacity, it's going to be really hard for you to make the team, and it's especially going to be really hard for you to be on the game day roster. Carrying 6 receivers on the game day roster and 2 of them don't play on special teams at the bottom end of the depth chart, that's going to be difficult. Tyquan Thornton, Kayshon Boutte, Juju Smith-Schuster, those guys don't have a ton of special teams value, if any. So when I was doing my roster projection, it became really hard to put those guys on the team because you're really talking about putting them on the team because, not in Juju's case is just money, but with Boutte and Thornton, you're putting them on the team because you're believing in something. Yeah. You're believing in Santa Claus a little bit with those 2 guys, right? That they're going to – Tyquan's finally going to figure it out. Kayshon Boutte's going to break out, like Mark said he might. Those are what you're counting on. You're counting on those guys as making the team outright as pure receivers, which is difficult to do when you get down the depth chart. And they already have guys that I believe are going to be pure receivers and aren't necessarily going to push for special team snaps, like Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, KJ Osborne. Pop will play on special teams a little bit in returns and things like that potentially. But you already have 3 or 4 guys on the team that are pretty much locks that aren't necessarily going to play in the kicking game. So it gets dicey. Kayshon Boutte, I'm glad he asked about him because I have not bought in stock in Kayshon Boutte just yet. I feel like with Kayshon Boutte, we see this out of training camp last summer, even in the spring. Again, he'll have one really good practice. He had a great last practice to minicamp.
Yep.
Then we won't hear about him for a week, and then he'll have another great practice, right?
Right.
And then we won't hear about him for 3 days, and then he'll have another great practice. And that type of seesawing, you usually don't buy too much stock into that, or I don't buy too much stock into that, because at some point you look at it and it's like, he's probably going, those are the opportunities he's getting. He's going up against, a practice squad cornerback here, practice squad cornerback there, and you don't want to make too much a big deal out of those things. I'm not all in on Kayshon Boutte yet. I'm just not a believer in him yet. We'll see what happens, but we've talked about this in the past. There's a lot of that type of receiver on this team right now.
Right.
I'm not just talking about talent level. I'm also just talking about skill set. So where does Kayshon Boutte fit in a receiver room that for the majority of the season at least is going to have Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, KJ Osborne, and potentially Juju Smith-Schuster? I just kind of named a bunch of...
Right, it's tough. It's really tough. So I had him off. I had... And to your point, like it's consistency. He's going to flash in individual practices, but he's got to be able to do it on a regular basis. So I mean, we've done this before. We'll break it down again. There's 4 roster locks.
Yeah.
Pop, Kendrick Bourne, who Gerard Mayo basically said will be ready for the start of the regular season, so he's not opening on PUP. Pop, Kendrick Bourne, and the 2 rookies, Baker and Polk. KJ Osborne, also based on his contract, probably making the team. He would be a pretty surprising cut. I'm not going to call him a roster lock. He's whatever a step below that is. So now you're at 5 receivers. That's already a lot. Are you keeping a 6th? And then that comes down to Jalen Reagor, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton. You want to throw Kayshon Boutte in there, you can. But, again, Jalen Reagor, to the caller's point, he can return kicks. And that's big right now.
Not only could he return kicks, there's a chance that he could also play gunner as well. He's done
they're working him at gunner.
And they've done that a little bit in the past, and he's obviously a lot thicker and more durable than a guy like Tyquan.
Well, they tried Tyquan at gunner, and then so there was that one practice where they were working on kickoff. Remember, and Juju was the only receiver off to the side. We all kind of saw that and said, that's not great for him.
Yeah.
Because he's, whoever is that 6th wide receiver is going to have to play special teams. The next day, Tyquan joined him. And I think the Tyquan gunner experiment is over because he got to be able to tackle.
Yeah.
So, and Boutte might be able to play some special teams, but Jalen Reagor has that experience. So, to me, Jalen Reagor kind of clearly has the inside track on that 6th wide receiver spot. Tyquan and Boutte, like I don't know, Boutte might have a little bit of guaranteed money. It's not a ton. Thornton, it's a clean break in terms of the cap.
Yeah.
You figured out with Juju Smith-Schuster. I've said this. They traded Jonnu Smith. I think they could find a way to trade Juju Smith-Schuster. Even if you have to cut him, like, you have all this cap, you have this cushion, you might as well use it. If it means that you can get more younger players on the roster and give younger guys a chance to play, the cap hit doesn't extend. The dead cap, I don't think, extends beyond next year. It's not like it's this.
If you cut him outright, then it wouldn't. Obviously there's ways to make it. If you designate him post June 1, things like that.
Yeah.
You can make it.
It is post June 1.
Yeah, but like you can make. My point is like if you did it now, right?
Yeah.
You can make ways so that it's extended over multiple seasons, his signing bonus proration. But the big thing with Juju that you have to ask yourself, because the dead cap stuff can be confusing, so I just want to sum it up pretty easily here. Would you rather pay Juju Smith-Schuster $10 million to play for you, or would you rather pay $12 million to not play for you? But it's only $2 million that we're really talking about, because if he's on the team, he's going to make like $9 million in this year cash if he's on the roster. So you're really only talking about outlaying a little bit more money because of the signing bonus prorations and all the cap minutia of it all to get rid of him. So that's why teams don't do it as much, is because you're literally paying a guy a boatload of money to not play for your football team.
Would you pay $2 million for an extra roster spot?
Right. That's what I'm asking.
I might. I might. Especially when you look at they're going to need to carry a lot of offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Because they've got to figure that thing out. There's some corners that I might go heavier at corner, even if guys aren't going to play a ton this year, because I don't want to if it's the difference between keeping a guy like Marco Wilson or keeping a guy like Marcellus Dial or even Mikey Victor. I mean, we think Alex Austin's a roster lock at this point.
Yeah.
Or keeping a guy like Isaiah Bolden. I might do that.
Yeah.
I might do that because you have the guy down the road because you are going to need to figure out what you're going to do after Jonathan Jones after this year. He's 31. Marcus Jones has been a good player, but he gets hurt. He's smaller. Like, you're going to want depth there. If it's keeping an extra offensive lineman, keeping an extra corner, maybe keeping a guy like Jalen Hawkins, I'd probably do that. I'd bite the bullet for where they are, for what their cap situation is.
I would too.
I'd certainly bite the bullet.
So I have them keeping 9 offensive linemen right now, which is probably 1 extra than what they really need to keep.
Oh, so I have 10.
I have 9. I have Cole Strange not on the active roster, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't count him.
IR or PUP or something like that. So I have 9 offensive linemen. I'll just read them off and we can compare. Chuksa Okorafor, Mike Onwenu, City So, David Andrews, Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson, Calvin Anderson, Jake Andrews, Nick Leverett.
Calvin Anderson, Jake Andrews, Nick Leverett. Okay, so I'm trying to see who you have that I don't, or who I have that you. I have Calvin Anderson. So mine are alphabetical.
Okay.
Calvin Anderson, David Andrews, Jake Andrews.
Yep.
Oh, did you have Michael Jordan?
No.
Okay, so that's who I have, and I had Jake Andrews on. No, I have Jake Andrews. Okay, yeah. So I had Michael Jordan just because he got a ton of run this spring, and that's kind of what I was going off with my roster projections. Like, what did we see from the spring? And he seemed like a guy that was involved. He's maybe a guy you could get to the practice squad and elevate when you need, but no, they need to keep a lot. It looks right now like they're going to need to keep a lot because we don't know who the starters are in multiple positions.
Yeah.
So you got to keep these guys to compete. You got to keep Nick Leverett and City So. I mean, they're keeping Layden Robinson anyway, and maybe Michael Jordan because who's playing guard? Who are your guards, right?
So you're definitely keeping the 2 draft picks, right?
Yes.
Wallace and Layden Robinson are locks.
Yeah.
Chukes, Andrews, City, and Mike Onwenu are also locks. So those 6 are making the team.
Yes.
From that point on, teams usually hover between 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Offensive linemen. 10's a lot.
Now sometimes teams will start with 7 just with the practice squad.
Right.
Goals.
So I would say 8 is probably where they want to be. But if you're in a position where I
use 8 as a rule of thumb because it's your starting 5, backup tackle, backup guard, backup center.
Right, and maybe Nick Leverett to me is the one guy that I wonder, he's sort of the swing vote here, because if you really feel confident in your guard play, then you probably don't need Nick Leverett on the team. He can probably start the year on the practice squad or something like that.
Right.
But he's a guy that has had a couple years under his belt in the league, has made starts in Tampa Bay. If you are not sure about the rookies and you're not ready to play Layden Robinson or Caden Wallace yet, then you might need a guy like Nick Leverett around just as that. He's the Chuksa Okorafor of the interior.
Right.
He's a stopgap for the time being. If you don't, then you probably could cut him. Maybe it's Michael Jordan on the practice squad. Maybe it's Antonio Mafi on the practice squad. You have those guys that are depth. Antonio Mafi, at this point, I haven't really seen enough to make the roster out of him yet.
I had him off.
Yeah, it's been a little bit rough for him since we've seen some more exposure with his side to side movement. He's just not there at an NFL caliber rate. What did you have at corner? Because that was the other spot that I felt like you could put a lot of corners right now on this team. So I had Christian.
I had 7.
I had 6. I had Christian Gonzalez. Jonathan Jones, Alex Austin, Zay Bolden, Marcus Jones, Marcellus Dial.
I added so I had Dial off just because, again, I was going off the spring and he was kind of limited.
Yeah.
So and I wrote this like there's a ton of competition here. It's way too early to know. This is one of the hardest to project. I had Austin, Bolden, Gonzalez, the 2 Joneses, Marco Wilson, and Sean Wade.
Okay. I could see Marco Wilson or Sean
Wade. I think Marco Wilson, it's a young group, and Marco Wilson's not exactly a weathered veteran, but he's played more ball than a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And then Sean Wade, just because I think the versatility. I think
not ready to quit Sean Wade yet?
It's not even that. It's just I needed some. I felt like, okay, Jonathan Jones might end up moving to the outside. Marcus Jones is coming off a significant injury. Maybe Isaiah Bolden they try in the slot. They did a little this spring, but that's why I went with Sean Wade over Dial or Victor or even Azizi Ur and Wade a good summer or spring. But
the only reason why I had Dial on is that he's the only draft pick on that side of the ball, and if you cut him,
Yeah.
and let's say they lose him,
Yeah.
right? They could put him back on the practice
Right.
squad, and this point is null and void. But let's say you cut him, and then they lose him. You literally have nothing from this draft on defense. Not a single
You
thing.
took 3 guys in the top 100 last year. That's fine. That's fine.
I just feel like
How many years did they
it's
have
the
that
one
on offense?
It's the one investment they made on that side of the ball, and I don't think
It's not like it's a premium investment.
I know, but he's a guy that had decent college
All right,
tape.
what if Mikey Victor makes the team?
I just don't really. I'm not really sold on either of the UDFAs. I guess
Okay.
is part of the problem too. Now Isaiah Bolden is almost from this draft class.
Yeah.
They've said that before because he didn't play at all last year because of the injury. So you could look at that. I feel like Isaiah Bolden's on this team right now
I think so too.
pretty solidly.
The ones I feel good about are Austin. I'm just going alphabetically. Austin, Bolden, Gonzalez, Jones, and Jones.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to Wilson, Wade, Hearn, Dial, Victor. You want to throw in like Caleb Ford, Dement, whatever. But like that's the
I would just like
they're
them to
battling
have-
for 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah, I would just like them to have one guy rookie on the defense side of the ball.
They're
One.
so young on that side of the ball. That's the like
But you like to have the pipeline continue.
Austin,
That's all.
Bolden, Gonzalez are all second-year players. Marcus Jones is a third-year player. Again,
Yeah.
Marco Wilson's now kind of one of the veterans of this group. He's I think in he was 2021 draft, so he's in his 3rd year.
If it's close,
And again,
though,
I kept
between
Wade
those,
just because I needed more in the slot.
sure. If it's close though between Dial and any of the Wade, Wilson, like you should be keeping
If it's
Dial.
close between those guys, but if it's between Dial and like Isaiah Bolden or Dial and Mikey
No,
Victor,
yeah.
they're all young. They're all young.
Yeah, I think Zay Bolden's on this team.
I think so too.
Because
But
main
for an
reason
example.
why is let's not discredit what he can do on special teams.
Yeah.
He's gonna he's gonna be a big time special team player, both potentially as a returner but mostly also I think covering kicks. In the open field, size, speed, good tackler. Like I think he's gonna be a really good special team player for them. So I you know me, you're
Yeah.
the special teams guru on the show. But I am not losing sight of the fact that Matthew Slater is no longer running down there covering kicks.
That's important.
So to throw as many bodies at gunner as they possibly have
Yeah.
is going to be important. So whether that's receivers like Jalen Rager trying to get reps at gunner,
Yeah.
whether that's keeping a guy like Isaiah Bolden who could potentially be a good body type fit for gunner.
Yeah.
They are losing a huge impact special teams player. And I know some people laugh at that being a big deal and roll their eyes
That's true.
at it, but it really is true.
Look at what happened when in the Super Bowl the Niners couldn't cover a punt.
Yeah.
Couldn't return a punt. Major difference.
All right, back to the phones. William is in Philly. What's up, William?
Hey, Evan, how you doing?
Good.
Okay. Hey, Alex, how you feel?
Hey.
All right. I just have 2 takes, so I'm trying to make this fast. Alex, you had said this before. You said time one, draft one. I think I remember that take though, right?
Yep.
Where they might have to double dip and whatnot. So let me just give you maybe another take too. How about just trade one and pay one? Like, look, I get it. Okay, you got a bunch of bodies at the wide receiver position. There's nothing that really stands out. That's who's that number one dude, And since the Patriots are so funny about draft picks and money is, of course, basically. I mean, regardless of how you feel about Amari Cooper, though, he's better than everything on your roster. But better than everything on the wide receiver core, as far as the roster is concerned, is that and he ain't gonna cost much, and you don't have to give up a first round pick. So, what do you think about that? I'll leave it at that. Have a good one, gentlemen.
Thanks, William. We've both loved.
Was
Amari
that trade
Cooper.
one, pay one?
Yeah,
I like that.
We've both liked Amari Cooper.
I
a lot.
love Amari Cooper. Is he available?
The Browns have invested a lot at that receiver spot in the last. They traded for Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
They traded for the kid from the Jets, who I'm blanking on his name right now. I forget.
I'm pulling it up.
I'm having some brain farts today. There's a chance.
Oh, they're Jalen Darden now.
There's a chance that I guess.
Oh, Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore. Thank you. There's a chance that the that Amari Cooper could be available. And
they'd be crazy.
We certainly saw what he got last time. It was nothing. Pennies on the dollar.
Look, he's coming. He's going to step right in, Alex Van Pelt. There's going to be no adjustment needed. I mean, tomorrow. If you can get Amari Cooper, tomorrow. The Browns would be ridiculous to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the Browns are going to do that. The Browns, part of the reason, a big part of the reason why the Browns moved on from Alex Van Pelt is they are so all in on Deshaun Watson working because of how much they're paying him.
Right.
That I just don't think that they're in the market of selling off pieces right now because ownership is basically saying we're wiping out football operations unless you make Deshaun Watson work because we just paid him $250 million to work.
Right.
So figure it out. That would be moving in the wrong direction, I guess I would say. But yeah, with receiver, we got another question too about KJ Osborne, and just asking, if he were to get cut from this team, free agents coming here in future years. You just signed this guy, you gave him some guaranteed money, you cut him anyways. Like, how much of an impact does that have? Because for right now, I still feel like KJ Osborne, to me, is still proving himself to my eyes of whether or not he's a roster lock, roster-worthy player. He had some drops in the spring that weren't great. I had a couple of flashes, no doubt about it. But, again, we go back to that same thing. Polk, Bourne, Osborne, if Juju's still here, even Javon Baker to an extent, a lot of those guys play a lot of the same type of football. Their skill sets have a decent amount of overlap, and I don't know if you're going to be able to get all of those guys on the field at once, but Osborne has played outside and played the X a little bit in Minnesota so that they could move Justin Jefferson around. So it's not out of the question. But do you feel like that's a factor in KJ Osborne is, you gave this guy some money and paid him in free agency? Yeah,
especially, I mean, he's a WME sports guy. So when you look at that, when you talk about are you risking upsetting the player, you're really talking about the agent.
Yeah.
And Ben Renzen is his agent, according to Spot Track, WME Sports. Here's a couple other Ben Renzen's clients. Justin Jefferson, Tremaine Edmonds, Javon Kinlaw, Chuks Okorafor he's one of Chuks Okorafor. He's listed with 3 different agents. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jalen Phillips, Mike Gesicki. So, he represents some bigger name players.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not a guy you want to poke the bear with.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. The other point that William made about the number one receiver, and we all agree that they don't have that coverage guy.
Dictating receiver. Yep.
They don't have him yet. But I will say, just again to be a little bit optimistic here, I really did like what I was starting to see from Jalen Polk towards the end of the spring. And we talked to him I believe it was after the Wednesday practice with minicamp. We talked to him, and I asked him, what's clicked for you? Because early on in the spring, first couple practices we saw in OTAs, he really wasn't popping all that much in team. Then we get into the last 2 days of practice, Monday and Wednesday in minicamp, and all of a sudden he's making catches all over the place. So I asked him what popped, and he really felt like it was the mental side of things. Like, he was still kind of learning the playbook and getting assimilated.
Hey, you're a rookie. It happens.
Right, all that kind of stuff. So if we assume that that's what it was, and it's not talent, and it's not ability, then there's no reason, like, his play should just keep going like this now, right? It's not a development's not linear, yada, yada, yada. But it should, in theory, continue to get better and better, and the days should stack now that he's mentally locked in. I still feel the same about Jalen Polk as I did on draft night. Ideally, he's probably a high-end number 2 receiver. Right,
you want him to be, and he's not like this kind of player, but you want him to be like your T. Higgins.
Correct.
Right, or your Tyler Lockett, or, next to, and then next year, you go get Jamar Chase, you go get DK Metcalf, maybe literally.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's, maybe that ends up being the Missouri receiver. Wow.
This is your guy, Luther Burden.
Luther Burden, thank you.
That's your guy.
Or no, there's another guy now. I've seen people in the chat talk about him. I watched him a little bit. I have mixed feelings. And actually, I'm looking at the consensus board. He's now the consensus top receiver in the draft. He's past Burden. I texted you about this guy. And the first thing I really have to do is learn how to pronounce his name. Tetairo. Tetoria, I think.
Yeah.
Tetoria McMillan from Arizona.
I was going to say the Arizona kid.
So there is that kind of Jed Fish. I know Jed Fish went to Washington, but there's that kind of connection.
He probably recruited him to Arizona.
So he did. I think he's like the highest recruit in the University of Arizona football history. The one thing people point out when I bring up Burden, and I stand by Burden being a great player, he is. But the one thing people bring up when I mention Luther Burden is he's small.
Yeah.
He's a smaller guy, and he's not an X. He's an inside receiver. He's just, for a wide receiver room that already isn't very big, you wonder about the fit. McMillan, 6'5". He's listed at 210. I think he's bigger than that. The problem is when I watch him, like right now, he doesn't play. He's not quite Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson was an extreme.
Yeah.
But remember how Johnny Wilson was the skill set didn't match the size?
Yeah.
He played like somebody much smaller, and it was both a good thing and a bad thing. There's a little bit of that with McMillan where he is really good at the catch point. Like, that's what he has that Wilson didn't, and that's why he's much better. He's excellent as a 50-50 receiver, but he's better after the catch than you'd think, but it's more he's elusive. He's not running over guys, and I don't know. Like, the ceiling, I bet when we get to the draft and we're way ahead of it, and he's still got another year to play, so we'll see. And the other thing with him that's interesting is he's playing at Arizona with his high school quarterback. So he's kind of advanced on the chemistry side of all of it. But you're going to hear a ton of Mike Evans comps thrown around, and you're going to hear a ton of N'Keal Harry comps thrown around for this guy. And it's going to – I think this season we're going to see people are going to be very divided on McMillan. But he's going to be a guy to watch. And there is enough flashes where he's going to be a true junior this year. He's young. He just turned 21 in April. So I don't want to make any definitive statements, but you do see flashes of this guy can be a prototype outside X, coverage dictating, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans kind of player. I'm not saying he's that yet. We still got a lot of football to play, but there are some who are jumping to, yeah, he might be in that group when we get to that point.
So two things. One, I've seen social media clips of this guy already, and from spring practices of him just making insane one-handed catches, like just not even necessarily in the flow of play, but just more like for fun, you know, like Odell style. And secondly, I have decided that Mike Evans is now retired from comps.
Okay.
Because he's too good.
All right, well, you're going to hear a lot of it.
So I feel strongly about this when it comes to draft comps, which, by the way, I know a lot of people feel like draft comps have no place and it's stupid. I actually really like them.
People love them. Are you serious? People can't get enough of them. Who's his comp?
I have fun doing comps. I feel like comps are really good because, let's face it, you people, as the casual fans or even as the diehard fans of this show or of football, don't necessarily have a full-time job dedicated to watching all these guys like Alex and I do.
Right.
So it's our job to tell you who these guys are and who these guys play like. The easiest way for us to do that is just to simply say, Jalen Polk reminds me of player X, or Javon Baker reminds me of player Y. Now everybody understands. That's who he is, right? That's his skill set. That's who he is. There are certain guys that are in that pantheon of NFL players that I just feel like you don't comp.
No, I'm with
players
you. We don't. Remember how much I refused to comp Caleb Williams to Patrick Mahomes when everybody else was doing it? No, I'm with you on that. Yeah. Is Mike Evans at that level for you?
I think he is.
I'm saying like Mike Evans would be the ultimate ceiling.
Mike Evans, I believe, is at 8 or 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
I guess.
Mike Evans is the first ballot.
But I'm not guaranteeing longevity. I'm just talking about skill set.
I understand what
there
you're
are guys
saying.
that have played like Mike Evans. Okay, so A.J. Brown. You haven't watched him, so I guess this isn't fair. But like A.J. Brown?
I'm not putting A.J. Brown there yet, no. But
no, I'm saying for my comp. For McMillan. Just way too early. He could come out and suck this year, and somebody's going to, Barth was comparing him to Mike Evans. Like, he's so young. That's why I hate doing this. But as we get it's this time of year. Like, you're starting to read up. You're starting to get ready for college football season. I've talked a lot about Luther Burden. I'm not doing my job if I don't give people the full picture. And shout out, somebody in the comments told me he goes by a nickname. This is how early I am learning. Tech McMillan. And some of the other X's, I think some people might have heard of some of these guys. Torrey Horton from Colorado State, we thought might come out last year. Nick Anderson from Oklahoma is an interesting player. Doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's got some flashy plays. People might remember Alec, I think it's A.O. Manor, was the guy. He put up, what did he have? He had like 248, I think. The guy who torched Colorado last year from Stanford.
Yep.
And J. Michael Sturdivant from UCLA. Those are like the big X receiver names.
When's the dude from Ohio State? He's finally coming out this year, right?
Who?
Emeka
Egbuka. So he's probably coming out.
Jeez, that guy was the next guy 3 years in a row.
No. So Ohio State. This is always amusing to me. Ohio State, for all the great receivers they've had. What was the guy's name? For all the great receivers Ohio State football's had the last 4 or 5 years, they only had one guy that was like a consensus #1 pick, and he was kind of a bust. His name's Julian Fleming, and he's going to be a redshirt senior this year. He just transferred to Ohio State.
I feel
he was supposed to be the best of all of them.
I feel like was it
Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, sorry, I'm butchering it, but I feel like that guy. I've been told about that guy 17 times.
Well, he was supposed to be one of the best receivers. He got hurt this past year, and I think that's why he went back to school.
Yeah.
No, but they have. Wait till you see the next guy.
Oh, I know. They're wide receiver U. I really believe that they've overtaken Alabama as wide receiver.
Oh,
U.
it's not even close. No, but Jeremiah Smith, 5-star recruit, 100 run rating by 24/7.
He's 18.
The people it's very early.
But it's not even just about it's very early in terms of his development. We also are not going to be talking about him until like the 2028 draft.
All right, so they trade for DK Metcalf next year. He's going to be about 30 around this time.
We're already planning ahead for this guy to come out of the draft.
6'3", 215. And I haven't watched him, so this is just me regurgitating what I've read.
This is like in basketball when they tell you
right.
Sebastian Telfair, everybody's going to be tanking.
So, this is like I actually am worried for this kid because what I read from one Ohio State writer, faster version of Marvin Harrison Jr.
Okay. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right.
Jeremiah Smith.
David asks from San Jose what we think is the strongest position group on the team, the Patriots right now. He says secondary as a whole. I agree that it is the secondary. I don't know if putting them all together is necessarily fair, but
yeah.
I hear what he's saying. Secondary as a whole, I definitely think is up there.
I mean, it might be corner.
I'm going to say that if I had to pick right now, it's probably safety just because Duggar and Peppers are two proven, very good players. But corner to me has the most potential.
Yeah.
We
did this. We did this last week, I think.
Did we? Because Christian Gonzalez could just be what he was the first month of the season last year.
Right.
Jonathan Jones is a high-end starter in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then Alex
Austin might
Marcus
be a dude.
Jones. Yeah, like those guys have a really high potential. Where does it rank in the league? I would say their secondary is pretty high up there in the NFL. Honestly, their entire defense is pretty high up there in the NFL. If you just assume, and I know this is a big assumption, but if you assume that there's not a ton of drop-off coaching-wise with the Belichick's out of the building, then their defense on paper is as good as anybody's. I really feel that way. They are as good as anybody's, especially if Judon is sticking. Like if Judon is sticking around, their defense on paper is right up there with a lot of teams. They have top-end talent, Judon, Gonzalez, Barmore. They have the Belichick lunch pail guys, Bentley, Tavai, those types of Peppers, those types of players. Kyle Duggars and Keon White are kind of those X-factor guys that if they play to their ceilings, then the defense is kind of out of control, honestly. Like they have a chance to be a very, very good defense. I don't know where we want to rank them, but I would say that they have a chance on paper.
I mean, they definitely have a chance. I think they have a strong chance to be the best defense in the AFC. Some of it's weird. Most of the best defenses, San Francisco,
Dallas.
I know Philly took a step back last year, but they got a ton of talent. Like it feels like all the elite defenses are in the NFC, but with in the AFC, it's the Patriots, it's the Steelers, it's the Jets.
Yeah,
like those are the three, and the Patriots could absolutely have the best defense of those three.
Yeah. Adam emails it and says, I'm wrong, shocker. That wide receiver U is LSU. That's fair.
Yeah, there's a competition there. That's fair. I think that Ohio's like LSU has high end guys.
Yeah.
But Ohio State, it's always 3 or 4 guys in the top 100.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State right now in the league is what, like Marvin Harrison, obviously, JSN, Terry McLaurin. I know I'm forgetting a bunch. But
JSN.
Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. I mean, that's a pretty good group.
And also LSU has Jefferson,
Chase,
Neighbors, Odell. You want to like throw him in there?
I would say that they've had a renaissance of LSU receivers, but we went a long way from like Odell, Jarvis Landry, LSU to Jamar Chase. Justin Jackson.
That's the thing. There was a gap there.
There was a pretty big gap.
All right, so On3 did this before last season, before the 2023 season. They have Ohio State as number 2.
Uh-huh.
They have LSU as number 3.
Oh, Alabama as number 1.
USC.
Is this like all time?
Let's see.
Because USC now.
They use metrics here. Oh, this is ESPN did it.
USC right now, if you want to give them Jordan Addison, obviously. I'm trying to think.
Amon-Ra, Drake London, Michael Pittman, Juju. Says recently. I don't know how recent, but they also bring up.
I'm not a big Drake London guy, so maybe that's why.
Maybe
USC.
I mean, that's a good group.
It's a good group. Amon-Ra. You throw Addison in there now too. That's a good group.
So they have USC, Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma is up there. Oklahoma State, that's got to be historic. Florida State, Florida, Pitt, Notre Dame. Pitt, sneaky good wide receiver. Pitt should get more credit for Addison than USC should.
Probably true.
They got Larry Fitz.
Yeah, but that's now we're going backwards.
I know, but you produce Larry Fitz, you get to claim that forever. I'll give him credit for that one.
So Ohio State now is, I just named all of them, I think. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin. And JSN, if you want to count JSN.
Olave, Garrett Wilson, JSN, Marvin Harrison, Terry McLaurin. Is Paris Campbell still in the league?
He's kicking around. But
Michael Thomas. They'll have Egbuka next year.
So that's that. Let's just take that 5, right? Harrison, JSN, Olave, Wilson, Scary Terry, right?
Okay.
That 5 versus
Chase,
Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, the kid the Jaguars drafted, who I'm blanking on right now.
Brandon Thomas.
Yeah, Brandon Thomas. Brian Thomas Jr., who I guess Odell is still technically
See, that's
in
the
league.
difference. Like, LSU might have the 2 best receivers in the league in Jefferson and Chase.
Yeah.
But you get to 5 after LSU, and then it drops off.
Right.
Whereas Ohio State, we could go for days.
And really, with Ohio State, the only guy who's a rookie that's not proven yet is Marvin, and Marvin's going to be a stud. So, Neighbors, I think, is going to be a stud too, but Brian Thomas, we'll see. We're talking about some more.
Yes, somebody in the chat brought up Pitt should get credit for Bub Means too. That is correct.
Oh, God. It's a good argument, though. It's a good discussion.
It's good off-season discussion.
There's wide receiver.
Could I talk you into doing a position U show during the dead period?
Absolutely.
Maybe do QBU, running back U.
QBU is tough because it always,
Alabama has the numbers.
It's so inconsistent of what they actually end up in the league, right? Like Alabama had a roll-in with Hurts, Tua, and then Mac was.
And there's one more too, isn't there? And Bryce Young.
Oh yeah, Bryce Young, of course. So they had it rolling for a minute there.
Yeah.
And then obviously Mac flames out.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts has kind of a step back year last year.
We'll see what happens with Bryce Young.
But
if I ask you, gut instinct, QBU, last 10 years.
Last 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it'd probably be Alabama.
It kills me because I don't like the coach. It's probably Clemson.
Clemson? Because of Deshaun?
Deshaun and Lawrence.
That's true. They do have both those guys, but both those guys...
USC. It was USC for a long time.
Yeah, when we were kids, it was
definitely,
yeah.
But those were all busts.
Yeah, they
were all busts.
Well, it turns out that their skill players were just out of this world, which we knew at the time.
I can't believe Reggie Bush carried a team. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Now I regret saying Clemson because he ruined DJU. DJU Uiagalelei.
He did. He certainly did.
We'll see. He's at Florida State now. We'll see what he can do. Is there another one?
We're probably forgetting one.
We're definitely forgetting one. It's killing me.
someone in the chat or some emailer.
Somebody's going to say it's Michigan. That's going to annoy me. It's
No,
Brady and nobody.
It's not Michigan.
It's not Michigan.
No.
I mean,
Ohio
Brady,
State has had some,
Brady alone maybe puts them in the conversation. It's not Ohio State.
But they haven't had a lot of great NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But
Stroud's like the first.
They've had some good prospects.
That's
like
true.
Justin Fields, Stroud.
Justin Fields, Haskins.
Yeah.
Who was the other one? The year they had to start like 3 quarterbacks and still won a national title.
Oh, Cardell Jones.
Cardell Jones, yep. Kirk Herbstreit, legend.
Going back
You know I
a
love
ways,
Kirk Herbstreit.
But Ohio State, just on pure talent, obviously it's Ohio State. There's a lot of 5 stars. They're going to recruit big name guys, but they have a lot of pure talent at quarterback recently.
Yeah,
it just hasn't all panned out.
Random schools that put like Kentucky had a couple NFL quarterbacks back to back.
Yeah,
that kind of and like you wouldn't think Kentucky. North Carolina's been putting them out.
Sam Howell.
All right, we need to like do some research and maybe do this as a show, and we'll hit on.
Yeah,
we'll just go through the positions. That could be fun.
Adam's gonna email back, and we should mention LSU. Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, they're getting it. Well,
yeah.
LSU for a long time was considered like not a quarterback spot.
Yeah.
Like it was considered a red flag for quarterbacks. They've obviously turned the corner and done much better.
Adam
years.
says Oklahoma. That's good.
Oh, that's it. Well,
Baker, Kyler,
just Lincoln Riley might be QBU if we're being honest. But
Caleb for a little bit.
This might be.
Adam knows his college ball. You guys would get along well.
I was gonna say like it would be great to do this before college season kicks off. We'll be in camp, so maybe in a week or 2 we do this.
All right, couple
Oregon,
more.
Herbert, Bo Nix.
Yeah, Herbert at Oregon should have been much better. Not because of his doing, because of that offense. I just can't watch that offense. Like it's not even.
Oh, it's fun.
The quarterbacks like have talent.
How can you not watch that offense? That's like your whole thing.
25% of it is a screen.
That's like your whole
Wide
thing. It's
receiver
like
screen.
West
Wide
Coast.
receiver screen. Wide receiver screen.
It's like
RPO.
Shanahan on steroids.
No, it's air raid. It's air raid.
But what air are they raiding? Like you said, it's all screens.
Oh God. Well, that's air raid against. Air raid.
I would think you would love that.
Everybody thinks air raid just 4 birds all the time.
It's all about getting too cute. I would think you would love that.
It's just, I got frustrated on behalf of Justin Herbert because he should have been much better in college.
I mean that's fair.
Yeah.
But
although we're saying he should be much better in the pros, and he's not much better in the pros either. So who knows? All right. Anyways, a couple more emails here to get to. Craig has a big question about the kicking game, and we don't have a ton of time left, so we can make this short and sweet. He asked about first of all Kyle Duggar on returns. They're not putting Kyle Duggar on returns. We've been waiting for Kyle Duggar to be on returns since they drafted him in 2020.
He'd be a menace on coverage though.
Yeah,
I don't know if they'll use him there, but he'd be great.
I feel like they're worried about his durability.
That's fair.
So the other thing that he asked about, remember we were talking about how the players with their backs to the returner are going to know when the play is live. You mentioned looking at the scoreboard potentially. He was wondering if maybe they could look at the sideline and then have like a sign or something like that on the sideline.
That's a good one.
I don't think that there's rules against that.
Well, you don't even have to have a sign. You could just have everybody put as soon as ball hits, everybody just puts their hand up, right? Yeah, you could do that. That's a good one. All right. Yeah. We're solving this problem.
We're solving this problem together, guys. We're doing a good job. All right, one last one here. It's Crossing Sports. Connor emails in, and remember we did the list of the most dominant Boston sports teams in my lifetime when the Celtics were in the middle of their run, and I mentioned this is when they clinched the Eastern Conference is when we did the list. I mentioned that if they won a championship, that I was going to put them in my top 5. It was 07 Patriots, 2018 Red Sox, 08 Celtics, 03-04 Patriots. Right, those were the teams and the runs that I called most dominant. Yeah, I'm putting them there.
Who
I
you're
said
replacing?
I would. No, does it have to be Mount Rushmore style? Is that what we're doing?
Well, no, you said you're putting them in your top 5.
Well,
you just gave 5. Who are you taking out?
I gave 4.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I gave 4 at the time. I said I didn't feel comfortable with a 5th team in there. It just didn't seem like a 5th team fit.
I think my 5th was the 14 Patriots.
I feel like this team fits in there. 81 and 20, right? 81.
No, they're right. I think it's 81-21, right?
81 and 20, 81 and 21.
Oh no, 81 and 20 because they played 101 games.
16 and 3 in the playoffs. Just a wagon.
No, that was an 18 Red Sox, 07 Patriots level of dominance. It absolutely was.
It's always cool when, well, first of all, there was a little bit of a lack of suspense to the culmination of all of this that it definitely exists with this Celtics team. Was I jumping up and down like I was when Malcolm Butler picked off the pass in the Super Bowl? Obviously not. They were up by 20 points as the clock was ticking down. But at the same time, this one, I said this on Tuesday, this championship felt more like relief than happiness for me because they had to win this one. Like the Red Seas parted, the road was golden. Like this was the year that they absolutely had to cash in, and they did. So when they finally did, I was just like, oh, thank goodness they did not go down this road. But I know it's a football podcast. Don't get mad at us. Do you see what's going on with the Stanley Cup Final though? Because the parallels were there until Game 5, and then Florida choked Game 5 at home, and now we're in Game 6 in Edmonton on Friday night, which is going to be insane, by the way, because that's just, it's Canada hockey. Like, it's going to be an absolutely raucous environment there. Connor McDavid is the best player in the world. Yep. He's probably going to win the Conn Smythe and the playoff.
If there's
MVP
any
anyways.
athlete, I think in any sport, we're going to comp to Mahomes, it's Connor McDavid.
So Connor McDavid, it's happened before that the losing team has won the Conn Smythe, like the player from the losing team. Remember J.S. Jaguar back in the day? Yeah. Anaheim Ducks, he did it. I remember that. It's happened before, but he's definitely going to win the Conn Smythe, even though they're going to lose.
Yeah, I don't. So credit to Matt Dolph and Ty Anderson for this one. The Panthers are the biggest fake tough team, and like, I don't know. I could see it.
You could see the reverse sweep.
I could see the reverse sweep. I could see that team could lose. I could absolutely see that team lose. So they're what, at 3-2 now, right?
3-2.
3-2. Home ice advantage tonight for Edmonton.
Yeah.
There's
tomorrow night. But yeah.
Tomorrow night. There's so much pressure on Florida coming back if it's a Game 7.
Oh yeah.
That's an insane. And if you're Edmonton, you're feeling great. I could totally see it. It's set up. I don't know. It's bold to pick the coming back from down 3-0, but like. I made fun of people when they were saying Dallas could do it because it wasn't set up for it whatsoever. The Celtics were clearly the better team. They had home court advantage. It just all that. Edmonton might be a better team.
I don't know if they're a better team, but they have the best player.
The gap is certainly closer if they're not the better team. The gap's certainly much closer.
I think Florida's a better, deeper team. Certainly play a heavier style, but Edmonton has the best player. And they might have the best two players, at least on Draisaitl.
Right. Florida does not have the same home building advantage the Celtics did.
No.
Like, I could see it. I could see it.
This is one of my big personal battles that I'm going to fight with. I probably get a lot of people down in the Miami area pissed off about this. I do not want to hear a word about the barn down there in Florida being any sort of home ice advantage. I want to hear a word about it. First of all, none of you guys knew that hockey existed until like 3 years ago. All right? Second of all, if you can't melt ice where your team plays, I can't take your fan base seriously. All right? That's just how I feel. I know that's probably offensive to some people, but don't come in here and tell me that the floor, was it Amelia Arena, right? Or something like that?
Yeah.
Don't tell me, Amalie. Don't tell me that place is going to be anything in a Game 7, anything remotely close to what Edmonton is going to be tomorrow night. It's not even close.
No.
It's not even close.
No.
And one of the loud, I've been lucky enough to be at a lot of games. One of the loudest I've ever heard a stadium was Pasternak's game winner in Game 7 against Toronto.
Yeah.
That pop in the crowd, that place was absolutely bananas. And it was a round one series, right? Yeah. Imagine Edmonton, Alberta, right? Yeah, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. That place is. I wish I was going. That place is going to be nuts. So that's your hockey minute. We touched all the sports. Want a quick Red Sox take before we sign off?
Sure. Yeah, hit me with it.
Quick Red Sox take. I can buy into the Red Sox for the time being. There's no sports, right? The Celtics are done. There's no winter sports. The Patriots are off until July. Can the Red Sox, and I'm asking you because you follow the baseball better than I do, can the Red Sox give me till training camp to be relevant? Can they give me this
I think
month?
so. I think they're going to. Well, it helps that there's 7 teams now that make the playoffs in baseball, which is too many, but that helps.
Right now they're a game out of the wild card.
Well, they'd be like 5 out if not for that 7th spot. Which is kind of my
But you play it as
no, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's the schedule.
it's if it doesn't feel like they should be relevant, that's why they're going to be relevant.
All right, that does it here for Patriots Catch-22. One last time, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. I might have a few Bud Lights at the parade tomorrow.
There you go.
Maybe a few High Noons as well. So we will be back next week, and we will continue it rolling here in the off season. And hang on for PU. Start that in about 5 minutes at the top of the hour. But until next week, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.